One. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Looks like we actually have audio this time. Thank you for everyone that kind of made a comment on the last stream saying that we had a problem with the audio. So, give it a few more seconds for some people to show up here. But there's been a lot of news coming out today about the Alec Baldwin Rust shooting situation. So, where were we before all of this happened? Obviously, we know what happened on the day. Everyone was pretty much throwing mud at each other in terms of trying to really, I think it's more of a PR battle than anything else, especially for Alec Baldwin. No one that was working on this production is going to be able to have a career anywhere in the near future. Um, I think the jury is still out in terms of whether or not Alec Baldwin will have a career. Really, every bit of news that comes out from here on out is going to be about how is the narrative being shaped from the DA? Who are they actually going to go for? If you have not seen it, there is a video, there's an interview on our 5 Minute Critic channel with an entertainment lawyer who essentially said there are two ways it's either going to go. It's either going to go that we're going to get criminal charges, and this happened in October. Like, investigations like this, criminal charges take a long time to get the evidence together, to get a case put together, because essentially you need to prove beyond a shadow of the doubt from the evidence that someone does actually need to be taken in. The other thing is that would not happen because it would be seen as a workplace accident, which would mean that we're not going to get criminal charges unless someone shows to have done something so outside of their level of responsibility, something so negligent that you have to bring criminal charges. Now, the point that I kind of pushed on, I think the point of that most people should push on is looking at Alec Baldwin, what Alec Baldwin did, not checking the gun. I think a lot of people, including myself, would say that is outrageously negligent. To not check the gun that you're handed seems so outrageously negligent. Whenever I brought that up to the entertainment lawyer, their response was, if they are able, and again, we're talking legally here, like how would any of this break down legally? Not what do you think should happen, but essentially in this in the world of law, how would it just work behind the scenes? The question would then be, can we bring an expert on that says that the actor is not supposed to check the firearm after the armor gives it to him? And it seems like it would be very easy, especially someone Alec Baldwin's level, to find an armor that will go and officially say that is not protocol. And yes, what I thought was pushing against that, you have people like Nicolas Cage, you have people like George Clooney that came out and said, hey, you got to know how to shoot a gun. You got to know how to check a gun. George Clooney said, I always check the gun. I have no idea how he did not check the gun. When I heard that, I was like, well, then there you go. There's no way he's going to be able to say that, oh, yeah, I wasn't checking the gun because that's not protocol. Essentially, all you need is one expert in the film industry to say that is protocol. And honestly, you don't think Alec Baldwin's going to be able to find that? I thought that was the thing, really, that was going to make it so that he would bear more responsibility, but I don't think that that's going to happen. On the other side, though, is the armor, and that's why the question that I put, we've got a few answers here. We've got one vote. The prediction was who will face criminal charges. One person has voted that both the armor and Alec Baldwin will. And the thing that I think is coming to bear more from the story unfolding is that I think the armor is the one that's going to get the most amount of scrutiny. This seems to be someone who is spread very, very thin throughout the production. Seemed like she was wearing multiple hats. But also, this was not her first time having problems on sets. She was on a Nicolas Cage movie that Nicolas Cage asked for her to be fired because she was not doing her job well and was making him in particular concerned because there were a few misfires. And there were a few misfires on this set. And it honestly seems like she will not work again at all. The more information that's come on her part. But if it ends up not being something so negligent that she would face criminal charges, then I think at the end of the day, that is going to fall on Alec Baldwin, because Alec Baldwin is a producer on this. At that point, we're going to have to actually look at, whenever a movie is made, you have to create an LLC. You have to create a limited liability company to 5 Minute Critic is part of an LLC that I've created. It's very easy to create one. It essentially means if there's any legal trouble, the business itself can get sued, and it's pretty much a wall between you and your assets. So the people that made the company aren't going to necessarily, it's not going to be easy to get after them directly, go after them. You can go after the company if you're sued, out the wazoo, then the company will fold, but it's not necessarily going to go after the people that own the company. So essentially what we're looking at here is they're going to sue the company. I think if they really hit hard enough, then they will be able to get to the people behind the scenes, and that will then be people like Alec Baldwin. Then I think Ryan Smith is one of the owners of the production company as well. So whenever you see it say New Mexico fines film company over Alec Baldwin shooting, that is who it is. That's who it's getting at. And Alec Baldwin, I do believe, is part of that, because he is a producer. He is a financial benefitor from this production. So let's start going through what it says here in terms of what this fine means, who's giving the fine. So it starts off by saying the New Mexico workplace safety regulators on Wednesday issued the maximum possible fines of nearly $137,000 against a film production company for firearm safety failures on the set of Rust, where a cinematographer was fatally shot in October by actor and producer Alec Baldwin. Few points from that. First of all, I've seen a few people online saying, so this is it. This is all they're going to be fined. Of course, all they're going to do is have to face up to a $100,000 fine. And you know that Alec Baldwin can pay that no problem. Not necessarily. This is coming from the New Mexico workplace safety regulators. Seems like kind of an OSHA organization. So this is clearly going to be one of many times that this production company is going to be sued. We still have like 5 or 6 other lawsuits that are pending, one directly pointing at Alec Baldwin for a wrongful death suit. So if you're thinking when looking at this, okay, so this is the end of the case, this is in no way the end. But I will say the significant thing here is this is the first time that I think we're seeing a result or a consequence have to come out of this. It then goes on. New Mexico's Occupational Health and Safety Bureau said that Rust movie productions must pay $136,793 and distribute a scathing narrative of safety failures in violation of standard industry protocols, including testimony that production managers took limited or no action to address 2 misfires on set prior to the shooting. So that's another thing we'll see coming from this. The more scathing the accusations of what was going on, at that point, the more likely criminal charges are, because criminal charges are going to be tied to how negligent were the people on this set and who was the ones that were being negligent. So it goes on to say the Bureau also documented gun safety complaints from crew members that were unheeded and said weapons specialists were not allowed to make decisions about additional safety training. I don't know if that includes the armor. We'll see if that includes the armor. What we had based on our investigation finding was a set of obvious hazards to employees regarding the use of firearms and management's failure to act upon those obvious hazards. Bob Genoway, who is the bureau chief for occupational safety, told the Associated Press. So at a ranch on the outskirts of Santa Fe on October 21st, 2021, Baldwin was pointing a gun at cinematographer Hutchins inside a small church during setup for the filming of a scene when it went off, killing Hutchins and then wounding the director. So then goes on to say Baldwin said in a December interview with ABC News that he was pointing the gun at Hutchins at her instruction on the New Mexico set of the Western film when it went off without his pulling the trigger. See, that there's still so many questions around that. I feel like eventually it'll have to get into more of what was actually going on there. But the new occupational safety report confirms that a large caliber revolver was handed to Baldwin by an assistant director, David Halls, without consulting with on-set weapons specialists during or after the gun was loaded. And I wonder if this is going to actually bring more investigation and more questioning, because that was one big detail that seemed to kind of not get the attention I thought it would. It was said by Baldwin, by the assistant director, that the armor was actually there. Meanwhile, the armor has said multiple times that she was never even called into the church. And it's also been said by most people reporting since then, they've never refuted that. So that was one thing that was strange, for people that were actually involved to say the armor's job was to do this, but then to be told, well, the armor was never even called on the set. So I don't know. There's something there. That's kind of a point in the whole case where something seems very off. So regulators note that Halls also served as safety coordinator and that he was present and witnessed 2 accidental two accidental discharges of rifles on the set, and that he and other managers who knew of the misfires took no investigative, corrective, or disciplinary action. That is so wild. Okay, I'll read that again. Regulators note that Halls also served as safety coordinator and that he was present and witnessed two accidental discharges of rifles on the set, and that he and other managers who knew of the misfires took no investigative, corrective, or disciplinary action. Crew members expressed surprise and discomfort. And there was a thing that happened later. Crew members actually left. There were crew members, and that is also a point of the story that kind of is not reported on that much. Crew members that were on this set like protested and left. They quit their job and did not, they didn't come back the next day. They had to hire new people. That was one thing I did not know, that the assistant director was actually given a job as safety coordinator. And that's another thing that keeps coming up time and time again. The armorer was given multiple jobs. The assistant director was given multiple jobs. They were all saying that they were being spread very thin. Many people were saying very vocally that there were problems with the weapons, to the point that when they were not being listened to, they then left. They quit the movie. There has been reports that people were using the prop guns with target practice with live ammunition the day before this accident happened. And that's another point that I don't know if that's going to come out later, but Baldwin is on the set as a producer. You've got the assistant director right here. The assistant director obviously talking with the director. Baldwin has said that he was talking with the cinematographer and with other people that were below him on the crew. I guess I don't buy that Alec Baldwin is unaware of so many of these problems that are going on because he's a producer. If he was just an actor, then okay, that makes sense. The actor says he's not getting a lot of information from people about, but he's been involved with the behind the scenes of this movie for about 2 years before this happens. So I don't buy that. That's something that I'm surprised it doesn't come up more, or maybe if it's behind the scenes and it's been coming up, but I feel like that's a surprising one that people don't really bring up very much. Then it goes on to say the safety coordinator was present on set and took no direct action to address safety concerns. Management was provided with multiple opportunities to take corrective action and chose not to do so. I wonder what that means. Like, who is management? Who is in management per se? Like, if that, I don't know if that includes Baldwin. As a result of these failures, director Joel Souza and cinematographer Helena Hutchins were severely injured. Helena Hutchins succumbed to her injuries. Rust Movie Productions said through a spokesperson that it would dispute the findings and sanctions. I don't know how long that'll take, but we'll see how that goes. While we appreciate OSHA's time and effort in its investigation, we disagree with its findings and plan to appeal. What exactly everything, we'll see how that goes, but everything seems to be so documented against them. I'm surprised that they would try and get something that goes against that. It says an attorney for Baldwin was not immediately available. Surprise, surprise. It then goes on to say the state fine applies to a film with a budget of around $7 million. That's another point. Whenever people say that this is a small budget movie, $7 million is not low budget movie. Sure, if you're working on Avatar, even if you look, indie movies go up to $35-50 million. $7 million, not a low budget movie in the way that the press tries to make this out. This is still a movie that took over 2 years of planning to get into effect, with large actors and with over 50 people on set. Like this, they try to make it sound like it's a no budget movie when it really is not. It's still a very substantial production with professionals that clearly were trying to cut corners. So then at least 5 lawsuits have been filed over the shooting, including a wrongful death suit brought by Hutchins' family against Baldwin and the movie's other producers. The lawsuit on behalf of widower Matt Hutchins and his 9-year-old son alleges a callous disregard in the face of safety complaints on the set. So, like I said, this is not really the only thing going on. There's clearly going to be a lot of conversations, a lot of lawsuits that are continue going on. This isn't even a lawsuit that we're dealing with, this over $100,000 fine. This is just OSHA suing them. James Kinney, a Secretary of Environment's Department who oversees occupational safety, said that the agency dedicated 1,500 staff hours to its investigation. And let's see if then it goes on to talk about the armorer, the daughter of a sharpshooter and consultant to film productions, was limited to 8 paid days as an armorer to oversee weapons in training and was assigned otherwise to lighter duties as a props assistant as her time as an armorer ran out. Gutierrez-Reed warned a manager and was then rebuffed. Gutierrez-Reed is both a plaintiff and defendant in lawsuits seeking damages in the fatal shootings. That is very interesting. In fact, let's go on to the other article that is talking about how the armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed is claiming exoneration after the report. So, because that's, if you're just joining, that's kind of the big war right now. Who is responsible? Are we looking at Alec Baldwin? Are we looking at the producers? Are we looking at the production company? Are we looking at the armorer? There's a lot of details that, and that is a big thing. Like Alec Baldwin and the company kind of points to where did the bullet come from as kind of a way to say, like, that's their lifeline. If they can find out that there was something so egregious in terms of someone bringing a live weapon on, a live bullet on set, then at that point all their problems go away. But I don't think it's going to be that easy. But let's see what Hannah Gutierrez is saying in regards to why she should be exonerated. She is saying, so start from the beginning here. This is from Deadline. Long in the spotlight for Alec Baldwin's fatal shooting of Rust cinematographer last October, the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, is now declaring a degree of vindication after a vital safety report's release today. After OSHA's very comprehensive safety investigation involving numerous interviews and review of documents, it is concluded that production willfully failed to follow national gun safety standards, which caused this tragedy, said Reed's lawyers Jason Bowles to Deadline this morning. OSHA found that Gutierrez Reed was not provided adequate time or resources to conduct her job effectively, despite her voiced concern. So this is eventually going to what was just said in the last report, which was that she warned that there were things going wrong, that there was needed to be more time. And I don't know how many of these producers this would, I guess, would damn by saying that she was requesting more time. She wasn't given a lot of time in her job as an armorer, and then things went wrong and no one was listening to her. I don't know exactly who that would include. So in a damning report, Rust Movie Productions LLC and its management were hit with the fine that we were just talking about. Critically, OSHA also determined that production failed to call Hannah in to perform her armor duties and inspect the firearm right before its use in impromptu scene with Baldwin. So that's huge. Like that. And I wonder if it's going to come back, if that's going to be a problem, because in every single interview, Baldwin has said that the protocol is that the armorer is supposed to check, and then the armorer is supposed to hand it over to the actor, and I think all of us are pretty much saying, look, if that is the protocol, if Baldwin is able to find people to say that that's the protocol, then that means that Alec Baldwin is more than likely off the hook for this. But we're getting these details. The armorer wasn't even there. You were given it by the assistant director, and that is not the protocol to be given it by the assistant director. To the protocol, by Alec Baldwin's own admission, is not apparently how it even took place. So the more information that comes out from this, it is actually seeming like the armorer might be in a better situation than we thought. So it then goes on. As we've stated before, had anyone from production called Hannah back into the church before the scene to consult with her, this tragedy would have been prevented. Hannah has also reached out to OSHA recently in an effort to provide her suggestions for changes and improvements of safety standards on set to avoid a tragic incident in the future. That is very interesting. So in the poll that we have right now here, let's check the poll. So it says, prediction, who is going to face criminal charges? Options are armor, Alec Baldwin, or both. Most people are saying both. And then we've got a few for Alec Baldwin. But honestly, and yeah, 0 for the armor. From this, if this is all true, and obviously this is really the first huge determination we've seen from a governing body. If OSHA is saying, based on what happened, that Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the armor, was not actually even present, if they're saying that, this is not he said, she said, this is becoming the official narrative, then that is a huge mark on Alec Baldwin, because it pretty much shows that there was some lying going on in the testimony. Okay, it goes on. With various lawsuits filed over the killing of Hutchins, including a wrongful death action from her family against Baldwin, the producers, Reed, and other crew members are still investigating. The sheriff's office is still investigating what actually occurred at the Bonanza Creek Ranch on October 21st. As the probe tightened, Reed herself sued Rust armorer mentor Seth Kinney. Wow. In January of this year, focusing on alleged negligence by Kinney seemingly mixing up the live and dummy rounds on the already gun discharge-plagued film. The filing in the New Mexico courts also claimed that props manager Zara Zachary wanted to cover up any previous accidents. I was not aware of that was going on. Like, we know that there was firing of the prop guns on the set, which is ridiculous that was going on. But I was not aware that there were lawsuits towards people that were already dealing with those items. Reiterating the narrative The Reed's industry vet father, Thel Reed, has been espousing since mid-November last year that Kinney never returned hundreds of rounds of live ammo to him from another movie they worked on together. Wow. The January 12th filed suit also implicitly carried forward the sabotage theory that the young armorer's attorney had been espousing for months. And people seem to be a little off on that theory. I'm not really sure why, because clearly I think there is a little bit of merit to that. I feel like there's enough merit to it that it should be explored maybe a little bit more than it is being right now. Excuse me. Okay. Going on. Hutchins was killed by a live bullet, yes, on October 21st. Baldwin said in his interview that he did not pull the trigger. I'm not entirely sure what that. I still don't quite get how that's supposed to exonerate him, because it is one of those guns that whenever you pull the hammer back, you can just let it go and that fires the gun. And he acts like he is very aware of how to use guns. He talks like he knows how to use guns. His father apparently taught firearm training, so he clearly knew how to use guns. Then he goes on to say, yeah, it quotes the interview. I've been told by people who are in the know in terms of even inside the state that is highly unlikely that I would be charged with anything criminally. That I still cannot believe that he did that interview. That interview is so asinine. But okay, it goes on. Oh, this is from Matt Hutchins. It says the idea that the person holding the gun and causing it to discharge is not responsible is absurd to me. That's from Matt Hutchins, who's Helena Hutchins' husband, and he told that on Today. And then he then went on, watching him, I felt so angry, the widower said. I was just so angry to see him talk about her death so publicly in such a detailed way and then not accept any responsibility after having just described killing her. That's the thing that even whenever the whole Oscars thing was going on and Amy Schumer made the comment about the joke she was going to tell about Alec Baldwin, I have got no idea why people are so sensitive about not commenting on Alec Baldwin in terms of him killing someone. Like, no one wants to talk about this in a way that actually puts the onus on Alec Baldwin at all. And that feels very strange to me. I'm not entirely sure what's behind that. Alec Baldwin is not really a hugely beloved actor. There's nothing, he doesn't really do anything that puts him in the center of the limelight the way, like, if it's Leonardo DiCaprio or hell, even if it's Will Smith, you had defenders for him. I feel like people don't want to see a beloved person go down in a way that, unfairly. Alec Baldwin just doesn't seem that much of a beloved person. When he kills someone, I'm surprised that there are so many people that are kind of wanting to keep him from facing ridicule. This then ends. Hutchins' family lawyer called Baldwin's filing and revelations of personal communications with Matt Hutchins to be shameful. He added, the only action that ended the film's production was Baldwin's killing of Helena Hutchins. And that's the thing. I don't know how much of what we're doing here is just kind of talking through something that isn't, like, maybe the big story hasn't even come yet. Maybe this is all just kind of like the breadcrumbs that are leading us to where this thing is eventually going to go. And like, these things take so long. These criminal investigations take so long to go on. You have someone like Baldwin who, to a degree, I think from a PR perspective, he continues to kind of throw himself into very hot water with continually making comments. He hasn't made any recently, but he decided it was good enough for him to talk about the Oscars. He thought that he was out of the limelight. He thought he was out of harm's way by speaking about that. So coming from this, we got a few comments here. Audio is fine. Perfect. Rosemary Kennedy says, it looks like Mr. Baldwin's attempt to shape the narrative might backfire. He just said too much. That's a big one. In terms, if Baldwin had said nothing, if like just on that day he made one comment saying, I'm taking time, I'm stepping away, and I'm cooperating. If that's all he said, perfect. But that's not all he said. He continued to go on. The biggest things, obviously, I think the huge one that he said that hurt him was saying that he felt no guilt. I don't know. I get what he's doing there, but that was just such a terrible look. Anyone that was at that point before that interview, my stance was, this looks like an accident. This looks like a very big accident. But then going forward, it was, what the hell are you saying you don't feel any guilt for? Like, it made him look like a total asshole. Then beyond that, him saying that, him going so hard on and I think the biggest thing here is the protocol. What is the protocol? I think that going forward, the biggest question with this in terms of, look, is it Alec Baldwin's fault? Is it the armorer's fault? Is it the producer's fault? Is it the production company's fault? What is the protocol whenever it comes to how an actor is supposed to receive a firearm. Now, Baldwin obviously has been working since, I believe, the 80s, and he's been working in movies since the 90s where he has to use a firearm. He talks endlessly about his professionalism, his status within the industry. So Baldwin is really not able. The biggest thing that Baldwin's able to bring is that he's a professional in the industry, meaning that when it comes to protocol, he's able to say, "Look, this is how it's done, and all I was doing is how it's been done for the last 40 years." But I don't think that stand is starting to stand up with everything that we're starting to see, because if Baldwin, what he did essentially in the ABC interview is he laid the standard out in terms of what it means to follow protocol in Hollywood. And what ended up going on in more and more of these reports that are coming out is, by his own standard, it wasn't even followed. He says no one is supposed to operate the firearm until it's been handed to you by the armorer. Okay, then it comes out that it was handed to him by the assistant director. But okay, they said it went from the armorer to the assistant director to Baldwin. Apparently, the armorer wasn't even there. So the more, and like this is kind of the more, these are details that are just now being confirmed. So the more that these type of details confirmed, I think the more that it goes on, the more it seems like his story isn't holding up so much. What is going to happen going forward? What do we have to look at going forward? Again, I'm basing this off of the interview that's on the channel with the entertainment lawyer, Chris Wheeler. And essentially, it's going to be pointing at the people that are in the production company. Baldwin is included in that, unless it shows that something so negligent happened to actually point at an individual. And I think that another Brian Johnson, who was on, he's in with the podcast In the Abstracts. Check that out on YouTube. He pointed out that another way that you could face criminal charges is if someone says something in a deposition so stupid that it actually puts the crosshairs on them in terms of being liable because of something. And I think that Baldwin bringing up the stuff they did in that ABC interview, saying he should not be looked at because he was just following protocol. If the more that we see that protocol was not being followed, and that he was a producer on this movie, and he's already implicated as a producer because the production company is always liable for workplace problems. I'm not saying for sure that I think that Baldwin's going to be in trouble, but I think before this information came out, I really thought that there was pretty much just clear skies for him going forward. I think there's going to be some problems here. I think from now on, he's probably going to shut up and not say anything because he's been getting himself in a lot of trouble. And I think that ABC interview is going to probably, if anything does him in, I think it's going to be that ABC interview. That was just so stupid of him to do. I mean, like, he did it to himself, but I'm just so confused what it is that that would keep someone from kind of pulling back and being like, maybe we don't do that. Maybe we shouldn't do that. But we'll see what goes on. We'll keep following this story. Right now, I would say after this, it looks a little bit unsafer for the production company for sure. Alec Baldwin, I'm not sure if he's really going to go through anything massive, but this makes it look a little bit worse for him. Leaving now, let's see. We got 6 votes on the poll. Who will face criminal charges? 33% say that both the armor and Alec Baldwin will. 67% say it'll be Alec Baldwin. 0% say the armor. If the armor was not there, if the armor actually wasn't even supposed to be working anymore, then I have no idea how she would be charged with anything. The PR battle really has already done her career, and I don't think there's any way to kind of rewind the clock on that, unless there's just a fully transparent announcement that she's exonerated, that she did nothing wrong. But the more that details kind of filter out that contradict what Alec Baldwin's been saying, I think this is gonna be bad for him, whether financially or it comes to prison time. I don't know if it'll be prison time, but the guy's going to pay a lot of money. All right. Well, we got a few more stories coming out today. Elon Musk was kind of crapping on Netflix because Netflix, like, they're predicting to lose 2 million subscribers this quarter. They already lost 200,000. So we'll see what's going on there. Elon says it's a woke thing. I don't think it's fully that. I think there's probably a bigger issue, but that's the hot button thing that's going on. And then there's a new Zack Snyder movie that's coming out. They put out some information about that. So I'm a big fan of Snyder. So there'll probably be a video coming later on the channel about that. Rebel Moon is the movie that's coming out. So thank you, everyone. If you have not, please subscribe to 5 Minute Critic for future updates on reviews and movie news.